that, made his father be tracked down and murdered? Was it a gambling debt? So Jordan had to go through a whole lot, not just the loss of his father, but then the media blaming Michael Jordan for the loss of his father. So we see Jordan walk away. We see Jordan pick up baseball. And I think the only reason Jordan went to baseball was Jordan's therapy. He grew up playing baseball. I'm sure he had a lot of fond memories. He always wanted to be an MLB player. He probably had a lot of fond memories with his dad playing catch in the backyard or, throwing balls so he can swing at them. But I don't necessarily think that Jordan chased after baseball because he wanted to be the next MLB star. I think that Jordan went after baseball because he had talked to his dad about wanting to go to baseball and how much he loved baseball. And I think after his dad passed, that was Jordan's motivation to step away from basketball and, remember his dad and go play baseball. Baseball was Jordan's therapy. So the Bulls move forward without Michael Jordan. We see the Bulls actually have a successful season with Scottie Pippen at the helm. We get to see Tony Kukoc, who just got brought in, have a big clutch moment in the playoffs. We see Scottie Pippen quit on the team because he wasn't the one to take the last shot. We see the Bulls kind of, even though they had a successful regular season, we saw the lack of Jordan in the big moments where they needed him. So my big takeaway was James Jordan's death sent Michael on his path of retirement. It's no secret that James Jordan's death affected Michael Jordan. But I don't think that if James Jordan is alive and healthy, I don't think that Michael Jordan walks away at the peak of his career and goes and plays baseball. And one quick comment on the whole Michael Jordan baseball fiasco. You're told, and we've been taught that, how horrible at baseball Michael Jordan was. He went and hit over 200 in the minor leagues his first year. That in and of itself was a big accomplishment. I have no doubt in my mind, if Michael Jordan would have dedicated the rest of his life to baseball, he eventually would have been in the MLB for the Chicago White Sox. But because of this whole James Jordan death, Michael now having to play baseball, you could tell Michael was missing something, and the Bulls missed Michael. Episode 8 brings us Michael Jordan's return to the NBA. Jordan now wearing number 45 instead of 23. Right off the bat, we see Michael Jordan is human. We see Michael Jordan falling and struggling and failing like he had never failed before. Now, we do see a couple of glimpses of Michael's greatness. There was that story where Smith, who was a young rookie, went off when he played the Bulls, and so the next time Jordan played them, they played on a back-to-back. Jordan scored what Smith did in the first half. We also see Jordan return to the Garden 5 games in and drop 55. But we could still tell Jordan wasn't Jordan. We see Jordan have a really big turnover in a big game against the Magic. We see Michael Jordan not in basketball shape. I mean, for 15 months he had been training for baseball. They train two completely different ways. We see the Bulls lose to the Magic in the playoffs. But I think that moment where the Magic beat the Bulls was the worst thing that could have happened to the league. Because now Michael Jordan had motivation again to come back and be the greatest in the world. He didn't perform like it. If the Bulls would have gone on and won and Michael played subpar, I don't think that Michael stays around too much longer. But now that Michael struggles, he loses to the Magic, that brings out Jordan's best. That gives Michael Jordan ammunition in his gun to come back and dominate the next year. Also in this episode, we get to see the start of Space Jam, and we see Space Jam as kind of Jordan's rebuild. And this is why there is only one Michael Jordan. Jordan only agreed to do the film if they provided him a full basketball court, a full workout room, so that way, in between filming, Michael Jordan would go practice, would go work out. And then they told incredible stories how his agent and his trainer would invite the NBA's best to come scrimmage at 10 o'clock at night. So I think that Space Jam was essential in Jordan's build and rebuild after he came back from retirement because he was on a private set. He couldn't have tons of media constantly in his face like he would have if he was at the Bulls facility. So Space Jam really gave Jordan that peace and that time to build his body to come back better the next year. Then we see also in this episode, Michael Jordan punch Steve Kerr in the face, which, as a LeBron James fan, I've wanted to punch Steve Kerr in the face a couple different times. But it just really shows the true nature of who Michael is. Michael's going to push you to your breaking point, and then he's going to push himself to the breaking point. Steve Kerr punched him in the chest because Michael was pushing him. Then Michael punched Steve Kerr because now Michael's got to push back. But out of that came a 72-win team. We see Gary Payton versus Michael Jordan, who some people consider one of the greatest on-ball defenders of all time. And we see Jordan prevail. We see Jordan take his team to the championship that very next year, and we see him win on Father's Day. What a beautiful moment. It really is like a storybook. So, what I found out in this whole episode was there were so many essential moments in Michael Jordan's life. From coming out of retirement and losing, to using Space Jam to get his time away from the media to build MJ again, to being able to win that very next year. My takeaway from this episode, 45 is no 23. 45 was a mindset, not a number. Michael came back and said, okay, I've taken myself from baseball, now I'm back to basketball. I've got to reinvent myself. 45 was his old high school number. So we see Jordan searching for who he has to be for not only the world, but who he has to be for himself. And what he realized, and what we all already knew, was that 45 was no 23. So, episode 9 brings us kind of the Steve Kerr episode, and we're getting close towards the end of the 98 season. We see the flu game in this episode, which we actually later found out was food poisoning from Michael Jordan eating pizza at 1 a.m. We see the growth of Steve Kerr in this episode, which is who we're really going to focus on. We see Steve Kerr's dad was gunned down in Beirut. And then we really get to see Steve Kerr make himself into what he is today. So before we get into the whole Steve Kerr breakdown, we do have a couple other funny stories in here. Reggie Miller's Black Jesus story is in here. He told the story where he was trash-talking Michael, and he happened to be having a very good game. And Michael came out in the second half, and I think Reggie Miller said he scored only 2 points. And at the end of the game, the Bulls prevail, and Michael Jordan has an incredible night. And he told Reggie Miller to not mess with Black Jesus, which is an incredible, hilarious story. We see Michael Jordan start to get fueled up because Karl Malone won the MVP that year and not him. We see the Jazz versus the Bulls. So we had some incredible moments. But, coincidentally, Steve Kerr was the one who came in big. So Steve Kerr was a good player. Not a very good, not a great. Kerr had problems in finals games of really coming on when he needed to come on. Really hitting the shots when he needed to hit the shots. So we see, in this episode, Steve Kerr come in big to seal the deal for the Bulls championship. Now, Steve Kerr was not a heavily recruited player in high school. Not heavily recruited. Arizona offered Steve Kerr in the last minute. His father was murdered very early on in his life as a professor over in Beirut. So Steve Kerr had a very similar story to Micheal Jordan, which I found very interesting. And Micheal Jordan and Steve Kerr had the infamous punch, the infamous fight in practice. And I think what Jordan knew was that Steve Kerr had a moment and had moments of greatness ahead of him, and that's exactly what was produced. After that fight in practice, after Jordan and Kerr, they make up, Jordan says that he finally respected Steve Kerr as a player. I think that boosted Steve Kerr's confidence. I mean, who wouldn't be boosted when the greatest player in the entire world tells you, hey, I respect you, I'm sorry that we fought, and I need you to have my back. So we see Steve Kerr hitting a game-winning shot to seal the Bulls' championship against the Jazz. We get the infamous Steve Kerr championship story when they were celebrating, where he tells the world that, you know, Michael's not built for those moments and that he had to take it from Michael. So we get a very funny Steve Kerr, Micheal Jordan moment. And that shot right there, that game winner, made Steve Kerr the person, the player, and the coach that he has been in the NBA. So Steve Kerr earns his championship wings. He wins 5 championships as a player. He's won 3 as a head coach. I think that moment really solidified Steve Kerr and solidified in his own mind that if Micheal Jordan can trust you to hit the big shot, you can do anything. And he's shown that. He coached arguably one of the greatest teams of all time in the Golden State Warriors and broke the Bulls' record of 72 wins to 73 wins. So simply put, Steve Kerr is a champion. Episode 10 and the final episode of The Last Dance brings us the 98 championship team. 1998, the Bulls' final season as a club, as a unit. Phil Jackson's final year in Chicago. Micheal Jordan's final year in Chicago. But we see a rematch of Jazz versus the Bulls. A couple unique things happened in this situation. The Bulls hold the Jazz to the lowest points ever in finals history, with just 54 points in Game 3. We see Dennis Rodman disappear and go to the WWE. We see Micheal Jordan miss the game winner. We see the Bulls on their last run. The Last Dance is such a fitting name for this documentary, such a fitting name for what Phil Jackson called the season, because they had nothing left as a unit. In Game 6, we see Scottie Pippen with a hurt back. We see Micheal Jordan playing 45 minutes the night before. We see him playing 43 minutes this night. We see the Bulls just gassed, tired. It is an incredible feat to win 2 championships in a row, let alone 3. And when you get to that kind of status, every night, every team is coming for you. Every team wants the Chicago Bulls. You've won 2 straight championships. It's been said, Jerry Krause has already said, this team is done after this year. Every team wants to be the team that messes up the perfect record. Every team wants to be the team that gets to knock out Micheal Jordan. But what the 1998 finals gave us was Micheal Jordan's greatest performance in any playoff game, any finals game in his entire career. Game 6. He carried an injured Pippen on his back. He carried a tired squad on his back. He carried the burdens on his back. And Micheal Jordan went out there and won his 3rd championship in a row. His 2nd three-peat of his career. 6 rings. 6 for 6. 6 finals MVPs. 6 championships. I can't think of a better way to end a chapter of your life, to end it with a team,